Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Larissa. I'm an event planner at Reactor, joining you from Brazil. Before we start, I have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. The session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand here on the Reactor YouTube channel within 48 hours. Keep an eye on the chat, we'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our moderators to answer. I'll now turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you, and let's welcome our speakers here.
So, welcome to the DP-600 accelerated session. So today we will cover like the whole certification exam, but with very fast pace. And then in future sessions, starting from next week, you will get an opportunity to deep dive into those specific sessions in more detail. But as said, today we will cover the DP-600 in like very fast pace that what that certification is about. So I have Nandan here with me. So hello, Nandan.
Hello, Vesa. So, hello everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. I am Nandan Hegde. I work as the head of data at Synapse organization. I'm a 3 times Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a Fabric super user. And you all can reach out to me via my LinkedIn or Twitter profile. Presenting along with me is my co-colleague, another data platform MVP, that is Vesa. Vesa, over to you.
Thank you. So my name is Vesa Tikkanen. I'm from Finland. It's currently like -10 Fahrenheit, and if I do the math correctly, it's like -25 Celsius. So and it's been like this for last 2 weeks, and will be 2 weeks going forward. So it's quite cold in here. I also do Fabric and semantic models and things like that. So DP-600 related things here from Finland. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP as Nathan, and looking forward for guiding you through this session on the next hour. With us, we have great moderators. So we have Kevin. Kevin is from the Netherlands and has a very strong background on CI/CD in Fabric and also the semantic models. Is a long-time SQL Server person. So Kevin, thank you for answering all the questions. We also have Taylor. Taylor is a Fabric community super user. I think you are very new in that position. If I misunderstood, sorry, but what I've learned already is that Taylor is there to help you like in all the details regarding the topics of this certification. Taylor is from Canada, so I think it's also a bit cold out there. So thank you, Taylor, for joining this session also. And we also have Sahir. Sahir is from South Africa and have a very strong background on data engineering and data science things. So all the things related to those Spark and stuff like that is Sahir will help you on those questions in this session. So thank you. Ask the questions on the chat, and they will be monitoring and answering all your questions in there. Thank you, all three.
Even though the questions are repeated, do post them and get a clarification. We have 3 beautiful and wonderful moderators to help you all with any queries. And in case if we do get time during that, we'll also present that question over the live session. But it would be majorly moderators who would be taking care of most of your queries for today.
Exactly. Yeah. So as said, this is the first session in the series. So we will cover the DP-600 certification in general level and like what does it cover, and then when you want to deep dive into specific details, we have 4 sessions in the upcoming days and weeks where you can deep dive into specific areas of the certification. You can see the details of the sessions from the link on the screen, and I'm pretty sure that it will be visible on the chat very soon also. So in addition to that, those 4 sessions we have, detailed sessions, we will have Fabric Data Days monthly every month going forward. And now in the February 24th, there will be Mike Carlo explaining different coding languages. I looked at the description and what it is about, and I'm definitely about to join that session. So learning what's the difference between different programming languages and where to use what. So that's definitely a good spot for you to join. There's a link for more details on the screen, and I'm very sure that it will be on the chat shortly. Okay, so if you want to learn Fabric and DP-600 related things or real-time intelligence things, a good place to have a hands-on workshop, full day learning session will be those in a day sessions. So Fabric Analyst in a day or real-time intelligence in a day sessions. You have those 2 links on the screen, and it works in a way that when you go to that URL, input where are you coming from. So if you are like me from the Finland, you will search for the sessions or the in a day sessions workshops that are close to my area. Or if you are somewhere else, there are like partner organizations are arranging those sessions like all over the world. So that's a point of contact or easy way to go for both Fabric Analyst in a day and real-time intelligence in a day session.
So basically, it's an 8-hour session wherein you will get a environment for you all to explore across all the functionalities within Fabric rather than creating your own trial version. And these are conducted by by experts either from Microsoft or usually Microsoft partner company itself. So in case if you all do get a time, and the main aspect is these are free instructor led. You do not have to pay, correct? So what is the harm in trying this out? So do go across those links and do register for yourself for better hands-on experience across Fabric.
Yeah, and you are not alone there. Kind of, if you study on home or at work yourself, you are kind of trying to solve the pieces on your own. Here it's a full day workshop led by an instructor, and kind of there are other similar minded persons working together. So that's a good place. So today it's about the certification. So DP-600 and DP-700. Today we will be covering DP-600 certification, and the certification is something you reserve from the Microsoft Learn website or your certification website, and we have a limited offer for taking that certification for free. So there are some rules and kind of restrictions on who can take the exam. So please read carefully through those, and then if you are qualified, you will get the voucher after some time when you request the voucher. It's only available up until February 28th. So or when we run out of the certification or the vouchers, sorry. So kind of be fast. There is this link on the screen, and very soon it will be on the chat also. Yes.
So Vesa, one of the common queries or misunderstanding that people have is both DP-600 and DP-700 are with respect to Fabric itself, correct? So what is the difference between those two?
Yeah. So I think this is a good question, and I want to hear your answer also. But DP-600 is like, I don't want I'm probably kind of playing down it a bit, but it's like a grown up Power BI certification in a way that it's more analytical aspect. Yes, it's Fabric and all those new item types we have in Fabric, but it's still more analytical focus rather than DP-700 being more data engineering and data science focus. So then you're kind of the tool set what you will be using is a different. But yes, I think there's still a bit of overlapping. Because, for example, in the DP-600, you are doing querying in multiple different languages, and you are maintaining the same object types that you would be in 700. How do you see? What's
Agree.
the
So
difference?
basically, DP-700 is more data engineering focused, whereas DP-600 is overall Fabric as a platform, wherein data engineering is just a subset, but Fabric as a whole is a very huge platform that we'll take a look across once we actually start with the presentation. So DP-600 is about Fabric as a whole, whereas DP-700 is specific to the engineering section of that.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. Okay, and then we have a FabCon coming out in 6 weeks. So if you are attending and visiting Atlanta this year, great. If you still are considering, there is a code on the screen that will save you $200 when registering. I've been on one of those events during the kind of few or last time when it was, and I see that it's an amazing event. So if you want to learn from Microsoft, all the community experts, and definitely be kind of get introduced or familiarize yourself with everyone, it's like a huge event where you see and can talk to all of the people who are also very much into Fabric. This year, it's only not only Fabric. There's a SQL conference on the same time on the same venue. So if I've understood correctly, it works this time in a way that you can actually join also the SQL con sessions and vice versa. So if you also want to see the SQL database things, it's a good place to be. Please correct me if I have misunderstood.
Oh, it's correct. Unfortunately, I could not make it this time, but definitely plan to visit next time.
Okay, so let's go to the topic. So this today we will be covering the DP-600 exam. This is a 1 hour session, and the kind of, as Nandan said, it's the whole platform we will be covering. So we will be running fast for the topics, and as said, we have those four individual sessions where we will be deep diving into the specific topic. So kind of here you get a hint what's going on, and then you can double click on the topics in more detail in the future sessions. Yes. So first, we will cover the preparing the data. So how do you land the data from your source systems to the Fabric, and how do you prepare or transform the data from the initial shape to the shape which is more suitable for your analytics. Then we will guide or cover different semantic model options and how you can kind of choose which option is best and what the semantic models are. And then we will finally go through some security governance and maintainability things on the Fabric. So that's the topic of today. Please be vocal. So on the chat, you have opportunity to ask questions. We have those 3 moderators who will happily answer all the questions and kind of get everything you can out of this session. And thank you for joining today. Okay, so the DP-600 certification is the analytical part of the Fabric certifications. We have the DP-700 certification also, and in this certification, you will basically, the main topics are maintaining the data analytics solution, meaning all the workspace tenant levels, workspace settings, is workspace structure, tenant level settings, all the domain settings, things like that. And then it's about how do you land your data and where should you land it and prepare and transform it on the platform. And then how do you query and analyze the data out of there. So that kind of quite a lot of things. And if you think about the languages this certification covers, we are talking about SQL, we are talking about custom query language for real-time intelligence. We are talking about DAX as our analytical engine language, and of course, when we go to the Spark or notebook things, we have additional languages there. So this is an easy certification because it covers so many different aspects of the system. Yes. So in detail, this is about maintaining the data analytics solution, and that's basically implementing security and governance and kind of preparing or planning the architecture for enterprise level. Natani will cover those sessions, those topics later in the session. And as said, it's not just like semantic model publishing anymore. It's more enterprise level governance and security designing and planning. Preparing data is about getting data into the platform, transforming that to the shape that we will use or which is suitable for analytical workflows, and then of course exploring and querying the data so that it's possible to kind of actually implement analytical solutions. Then we also in the certification you learn or you show how to build semantic models and how to implement security roles in there, role level security in there, and how to optimize the semantic model for scale, so enterprise usage. In the certification exam, even though these are like the how many percentage each section is part of, it's not kind of, questions are not in specific order or something that you could kind of find out that, hey, now this section is only for maintaining data analytics and solutions. Be prepared that in the certification exams there can be multiple questions from each and every section, and they are kind of next to each other in a way that you just have to kind of go through and go for the next questions. Nandani, do you have any comments kind of how the certification experience is like? Is it kind of what do you want to say about that?
So I was one of the few who had taken the certification during the first month itself. Correct. So for us, everything was new at that time. Fabric had the certificate had just came in. Correct. So it was a wonderful experience. It helped me gain my confidence of the work that I was actually doing with the certificate, my knowledge aspect. So it does test your knowledge. It's rather than what one suggestion that I'll provide is do get a hands-on experience on the same. And for that itself, there are XIED training sessions that provide you with the free environments for you all to test it out. So that would be one suggestion, that do get a hands-on experience before trying out the certification. that would be a very good opportunity for you all to proceed.
Exactly. Kind of in the, if you visit the study guide for the exam, there is that take a free practice assessment, but keep in mind that those are only example questions. Yes, it makes sense to take the practice assessment, but don't think that you will pass the exam if you only kind of memorize those questions, because they are like example questions. Yes, they kind of give you the mindset what's in there, but as Nadani said, having a wider knowledge of the platform and having a real life knowledge and experience on the system definitely is a helpful guide on that one. And that's why those in a day says workshops, for example, is a good way to practice even for the exam. Good. So Fabric and DP-600 is everything. So we start from getting the data into the platform, and there are tools in Fabric which are built for that. Then there are tools or offerings in the Fabric services. I could say that where you store the data, there are multiple different database formats which you can use to store the data, and then there are multiple analytical and transformation tools which can be used to transform the data in a shape easier to use in an analytical solution. And even no matter what your data is coming from, is it like a batch time event or real-time event, there are tools in Fabric that can work on both type of data. And then when your data is ready for analytical output, you share your kind of findings through Power BI. And everything in Fabric is built on common storage layer called OneLake, and secured by enterprise governance features and security rules. And of course, as today everything is powered for AI or built up prepared for AI. So you can even enhance or accelerate your development with AI enabled things, or use the new models out there on top of your data and get more insight or new applications with that. Good. But now let's go to the actual thing. So getting data into the platform, and Nandani, to you.
So basically, as Vesa mentioned, correct, Microsoft Fabric is basically a software as a service tool that Microsoft has provided that covers everything, right from data movement, that is moving data from one location to another, data transformation, real-time intelligence and analytics, data storage, of course. Once you move the data, you need to preserve the data somewhere, correct? Data storage. On top of that, you can do the analytics and reporting, correct? So those who are familiar in the Azure world called Azure Synapse, one can consider Microsoft Fabric as a software as a service version of Azure Synapse with much more additional features and functionality like Copilot, as Vesa mentioned, AI aspect, integration aspect, correct? So Microsoft Fabric can be considered as one-stop shop for everything in the data world. So now we'll walk through how to prepare data via Microsoft Fabric, that is from ingestion to transformation, and then how to query and analyze the data to turn the raw inputs into actionable insights. So basically, we would be covering the end-to-end data lifecycle via Microsoft Fabric. And we all know that every analytics or AI use case basically starts with one fundamental problem in today. That is getting the data in reliably, in a clean version and at scale, correct? And that's where most organizations have an issue, because for most organizations, data is spread across everywhere and they're in silos. They're in operational databases, they're in some SaaS applications, flat files commonly in Excel files, across SharePoints, APIs, and other streaming sources. So basically, Fabric is designed to meet that challenge or reality head on. So Fabric allows one to ingest data nearly from any source without having to stitch together multiple tools, because Fabric today provides multiple inbuilt connectors to wide variety of sources, correct? And these are native connectors, low code, no code way of connectors. Whether it's SQL databases, whether these are cloud storages, SaaS platforms, or real-time streaming data, Fabric makes one goal: to make the ingestion consistent and repeatable. And hence, this removes the traditional friction of managing separate ingestion frameworks for different types of data. So that's what the first step is. And in order to get the data, Microsoft Fabric has something called as the data factory experience of the thing, which in turn contains two subset of things that is visible on the screen. One is called data pipeline and another is called the data flow Gen 2 aspect. Now both are somewhat of a low code, no code way of doing things. Whereas there is, in case if you are a pro coder, correct, and you want to have more metadata driven framework in a customized way, that's where there's something called as notebooks, correct? So moving on, Vesa, can you move?
Before we go there, we also have those shortcuts. So what about shortcuts and mirroring? What are those things?
Oh, nice question. So up till now, the data pipeline, data flow Gen 20 notebook that I discussed, correct, that we would cover in detail in subsequent slides. Those are more on data movement from one source to another and doing data transformations, correct, via some low code or pro code way. Whereas shortcuts that you mentioned is basically a type of data virtualization thing, meaning Microsoft Fabric allows me to access data from external sources or within internal sources as well. But for now, I'll majorly cover the external sources. So there are external sources like Dataverse or Azure storage accounts, blob storages, or even Google Cloud Platform, correct? Or Amazon S3 bucket, which is equivalent to Amazon version of storage layer.
And even on-premise data sources. So S3 bucket. I have implemented the solution where the shortcuts are actually pointing to the on-premise infrastructure if the on-premise storage appliance just supports S3 buckets. So exactly external data somewhere, and you can shortcut there.
And there is no need for me to physically replicate the data or copy the data. I can, even though the data is present externally, I can read the data in near real time from within the fabric, directly mapping to that source without having the need to replicate the data. So isn't that a very good way to avoid data duplication and have a better data governance, but also to have near real time reporting, correct? The other aspect though, which is missing in this slide, what Vesa mentioned, is something called as mirroring. As the name suggests, I want to physically replicate the data or mirror the data from external sources into Fabric. Now, why would one have to physically replicate it? Because in case of shortcut, imagine if there is a heavy set of data, correct? Then analyzing it in near real time, it does have impact on the source system where we are hitting, correct? So there might be some performance issues or another scope of things. But in case if you want near real time reporting without any performance issues, that's where you have to do mirroring. It's not even low code, no code. I'll say just selecting two buttons or two settings within Microsoft Fabric, I can set up synchronization of data from external sources like SQL Server, Google BigQuery, now even Oracle to some extent, correct? From their database into Fabric in near real time without having to write any code, just with two configuration aspect. Isn't it great? So that's the another two ways of getting in data into Fabric for analytical purposes. But now in the subsequent slides, we will be majorly covering across the data factory experience and the notebook side of the things. Now, one of the common aspect that I said is first is to get the data, correct? Now, one aspect, there's something called as Fabric data pipeline. Now, in Fabric data pipeline, there's something called as copy data activity and copy job. As the name suggests, it is used to copy the data from source to destination. But there's one challenge. Unfortunately, in that scenario, you can only copy the data as is without any transformation. So it's good in case if you want to move the data as is or you want to do some migration. But in today's world, major challenge is cleansing the data. So for me to cleanse the data, I do need to make some transformations. Correct. So for managing the data transformation side of things, there are two major components. One is the Dataflow Gen 2, another is the notebooks. Now, in case of Dataflow Gen 2, it's basically a low code way of doing the data transformation from a UI driven method, correct? And it's basically those who are familiar with Power Query, correct? Or those who have been using Power Query in your Power BI side of things in Dataflow Gen 1 or Power BI desktop, one can consider Dataflow Gen 2 similar to that.
I think it's even compatible in a way that everything that works in a Dataflow Gen 1 or in Power BI transform data, you can basically copy the code, the Power Query code to Dataflow Gen 2. It could be that there are some connectors that are not compatible, but most of the connectors are. So it's basically kind of, you can transform your thing from the Power BI dataset import into the Dataflow Gen 2 quite easily.
And then one major difference is Dataflow Gen 1 only has the data transformation which can be consumed within the Power BI. But in case of Dataflow Gen 2, all the transformations that can be done in a low code way of via Power Query, you can dump that data or dump that transform data into some destinations that are not present in Dataflow Gen 1. Correct. So Dataflow Gen 2 gives you a flexibility either to have all the transformation as is for future analytical purposes, or it gives you a flexibility to add that data into a destination which you can reuse for other purposes as well. Hence, that's the reason why data flow and the engine on how the processing happens, Microsoft is frequently making changes across that. Hence, Vesa, there is a question, correct? Why Dataflow Gen 2 is promoted instead of Gen 1? Would you like to take that?
Yeah, so I think you briefly mentioned that. So Dataflow Gen 2, you can output the data to a destination, meaning that it can land on a table. As of when Dataflow Gen 1, it's basically, yes, it's a transformation, but who is consuming the data? It's the Power BI only. So, and here on the Dataflow Gen 2, when you can land the output of the transformation into the table, you can use all the tools in Fabric and kind of further enhance that going forward. And it's not just load the Power BI model in there.
Agree with that. So Dataflow Gen 2, as we said, is a more low code way of doing it. Hence, it's though Microsoft is working on parameterizing and enabling more parameters to have it in a metadata driven way, still there are certain limitations. Hence, we have an alternate aspect, that is Fabric notebooks. Now, Fabric notebooks, within Fabric notebook, there are multiple engines. There are Spark engines, there is Python engine, and then there is even SQL engine, which we won't consider. For us, for this scope, let's focus only on the Python version of the engine and the Spark engine. Now, one can consider this notebook similar to the Synapse notebook or the Databricks notebook, but there are some limitations with respect to the clustering aspect. The cluster flexibility that Databricks provides, there's some limitations in terms of environments here. But in case if you want to have a pro code driven transformations with metadata aspect, and if the data set on which you're doing your transformations is pretty large and pretty complex, That's where you usually go with Spark notebooks or Fabric notebooks. So in case Microsoft Fabric provides you two ways for transformations, either the Dataflow Gen 2 or the notebook way. Vesa, do you want to do a comparison as to when to use which one?
Yeah, I think that main difference you can, I think you can probably connect to many of the sources in either one of them. And at the end, you can land the data in either one of them to the tables. But as you said, that if I have a very custom implementation for my transformation, that I know that this is something I need, probably in Power Query, it's either impossible or at least it's quite, I would say, heavy to do kind of some custom transformations. As of in notebooks, when you can run your PySpark code, you have basically like all the libraries you would want to use, and all the programming kind of the power from the Python language that you can use. So kind of it's more, as you said, pro code, low code thing, but they are meant for the same thing. So I would say that if you have a working solution with Dataflow Gen 2 and it's up and running, would you kind of gain something when you transform the exactly same thing into notebooks? I would say that kind of I would like to do something else than just transforming from programming language to programming language. So kind of that they do same things, but it the difference is how do you use them and what do you need. If you need the flexibility of all the libraries available in PySpark, for example, you definitely go for the notebooks. And if you want to ease of use and low code mentality of the Dataflow Gen 2 Power Query, then go that route.
Agree. So basically, it depends on your corresponding team strength while designing it. Correct. If your team is more expert on the Power Query side of the things, then definitely one can prefer Dataflow Gen 2. Whereas if it is the team is more expert on the Python side of the things, then notebook would be a much easier way. And with respect to the consumption side of the things, there's a question, correct? That which one is preferable, correct? Consider meaning how much CU is being consumed. So now that's a good question. It depends, but considering that in case if I have to do the same set of transformation, ideally based on what we have seen across our past experiences, my Fabric notebook has a lower consumption of your Fabric capacity over Dataflow Gen 2 and data pipeline over the same set of action, that is moving the data or something, correct? But everything depends on your core strength and the crux of the team, depending upon which you will take the necessary, one needs to take the necessary aspect.
I would say that kind of the heavy responsibility is on the Spark Notebook developer. That you can write a code that performs very well or not so well, and kind of when you write your own code, you have more responsibility. And yes, as a lower level infrastructure, the CU cost per second is less than what it is on the Dataflows Gen 2, because you get kind of more, I would say, prepared or kind of higher level programming language. But as said, it depends. Kind of both of them are enterprise level things you can use in your ETL. And Microsoft just recently there was a new pricing announced for the Dataflow Gen 2. So there are like so kind of the pricing model is more compelling on today than it was like few months ago.
Agree. And Dataflow Gen 2 and Fabric notebooks can be scheduled explicitly, individually, correct? But in today's world, the main aspect is with respect to having an end-to-end integrated flow, correct? So moving on, Vesa, can you move to the next slide?
Yep. So
Okay. So I'll reiterate the one, correct? As we said, correct? Dataflow Gen 2 is more of a low code, no code UI driven way of doing the transformations, wherein you have a graphical environment for you to make the necessary changes. And in case if you're an expert in Power Query, you can directly add the changes or the transformations via the advanced editor itself. And one benefit of Dataflow Gen 2 over Dataflow Gen 1 is you do get an option to load the transformation into a destination. And one can schedule the data flow independently. But in today's world, Vesa, moving to the next aspect, the main aspect is integrating flows. Correct. I want to have an end-to-end flow. I won't even have only one source of data. Correct? I'll have multiple aspects. So that's where data pipeline comes in. So data pipeline is not one of the crux or the core activity within the data pipeline was the copy activity to move the data as is. Correct. But data pipeline is just not limited to that. It helps in orchestrating and integrating all different flows activities in one go, and helps in having a proper flow or controlled flow of your data as and how you need it. And within data pipeline, there are different categories of activity. Some are like data movement, like copy delete activity. Some are like iterative activity. In any languages you have an iteration, correct? If I want to re-execute it in loop, so you have for each activity, until activity, correct? And data pipelines help you orchestrate the ingestion and transformation across the source, and it has an own inbuilt monitoring, logging and error handling aspect. So this helps in integrating all your notebooks data transformations via Dataflow Gen 2 and ensures an end-to-end flow. Would you like to add anything, Wes, on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Kind of that's the way to orchestrate things in Fabric. Build a pipeline even when you don't use the copy activity or any pipeline native things. It just makes sense to schedule notebooks and Dataflow Gen 2s also within the pipelines, because then in future you can add things in there. If you start your scheduling on orchestrating so that you orchestrate only the notebook or only the Dataflow Gen 2, then kind of what if you need something else? But in pipelines, you can just invoke all the different type of activities within the Fabric. So exactly as you said.
So moving on. So can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Now, one of the major aspect that we said in notebooks was it is majorly used for heavy data sets and complex transformations, correct? And it is majorly a coder way of managing the platform. And it is not just restricted to Python, correct? You can do the transformations. You can leverage multiple languages within the same notebooks in terms of different cells within the notebook. So it gives you an ease with doing those transformations, correct? Wherein at any point you can switch to any language as needed. So you can use Python, R language, SQL or Spark languages. Now, one of the question, Vesa, is what do we mean by large data set in notebooks? Would you like to provide an update on that?
Large data set in notebooks. So notebooks, as in described in here, are running on top of the Spark. So in Spark, we are running on an MPP architecture, so massively parallel architecture where we have multiple nodes running on top of your data. So even though when you on the code as seen on the screen, you alter or transform some data objects in the code. What you are actually doing is that you are building up a stack of transformations which will be executed on multiple nodes. So kind of the large data sets or something are kind of Spark and Spark notebooks in Fabric scale very well on large data sets. I don't know if the question would be that what is a large data set, kind of how many lines or columns or something. I don't have a concrete answer on that, but kind of from my experience, this is scalable for billions of rows or tens of gigabytes or hundreds of gigabytes of data when written to the disk, and you still can do interactive transformations on because the Spark cluster can scale to multiple nodes.
Correct. So basically, any heavy data set that contains millions or billions of rows can be processed via notebooks, correct? And it integrates directly within the Fabric internal storage layers like lakehouse and warehouses, but you can also connect to external data sources via your custom code or by installing some external libraries or packages, correct? So Notebook gives you that flexibility. In case if some custom connectors are not available in the low code way, you can write your own custom code to integrate those systems as well.
And
Moving on.
now I think, was it like last week or something, Microsoft introduced the new connections integration. So kind of, as you said, that you can write your own connections to the source data sources, but actually kind of going forward, it will be possible to use those connections you have defined in Fabric or Power BI already before. So if you have a connection to your SQL database somewhere, Azure SQL, you can actually integrate that to your notebook with just few clicks going forward. So you no longer need to kind of design that where do I create the connection string, where do I save the passwords, something like that, because you actually have the Fabric connections available to your notebooks also. So that's a good addition.
So moving on, Vesa, the next aspect. So now corresponding to the storage layer, Microsoft has multiple aspects like something called a SQL analytic endpoint corresponding to the lakehouse, etc., wherein it provides you with a SQL native way to do your exploratory data analysis. And not only pertaining to that, you can even explore your data via SQL or the KQL, Kusto query language in the event stream aspect, DAX via your semantic models or notebooks. So Fabric provides you an integrated platform to do your exploratory data analysis based on any language that you're familiar with, be it SQL, Kusto query language, DAX, or any of the native process code language like R via notebooks. So now we saw how to get the data, how to do the transformations, how to store it. So the next logical layer that comes is the analytical side of the things. So Vesa, would you like to take over on that aspect?
Yeah, thank you. So going forward to the implementing and managing semantic models. So now we have the data in our OneLake. It's queryable, but we want to create semantic out of it. So we want to prepare that for consumption of the reports or business users. Kind of that, let's prepare the data for easy consumption. There, we are designing semantic models. And models, there are kind of few important things when designing models. First of all, we are not building a model only for one purpose or one report or something. So back in the days when we were talking about Power BI, we probably quite commonly had like a data set and a report, and they were tightly integrated. Now we want to create semantic model which is consumable in business user using Excel or multiple reports using Power BI or even in a paginated report or similar. So kind of we want to create flexible semantic models that are able or are prepared so that they can further evolve. And this is more and more important because now we have a lot of consumers for the semantic model. So you need to prepare or design the semantic model in a way that when you add something, you don't break all the consumers of your semantic model. Data growth. So semantic models are enterprise level. So there can be billions and billions of rows in a model, dimensions can be hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, and it should scale. So we need partitioning, we need different type of techniques to keep it up, and we will cover them shortly. But also, even though we are preparing for change, we are preparing for enterprise scale, we are not preparing for one report. So kind of doing those tricks that, hey, I made this report work, but my semantic model is something that no one understands, is like not so optimal thing, because kind of now we would like to create reusable and kind of semantic models that many other persons in your organization are able to consume also. Okay, so if you think back for the Power BI time, we had two different modes for Power BI dataset, and now in today's world, the semantic model. We have the import and DirectQuery mode. Import mode is something where you refresh the model. You read from the source, and then you build up a physical layer in your model, which contains the data as it was on the time when it was refreshed. This technique can use views, or it can use Power Query or kind of transformations during the load, because we are creating a physical layer of the model on when refreshed. That was like that has been here like many years. Then we have a DirectQuery mode where we are using some kind of database engine, not only SQL, but for example, custom query language and others, where while end user is consuming our model, it actually invokes real-time queries for the source. So you see always data as it is on the time of the query. But if you have heavy, complex transformations, they are also happening on the time of query. So imagine including a view in your DirectQuery model, and then end user consuming the view. The calculations happening in the view are happening for each and every refresh of the report or visualization, not just the whole semantic model. And now, as a new kid in town, is the DirectLake. So DirectLake models are something that we use to connect directly to the permanent storage, meaning the delta tables on OneLake. So those tables we have prepared using Dataflows and do notebooks and all the ETL tools we discovered. And we connect directly to there. So data is always up to date. There is no refresh. Yes, you can have a kind of pause in the refresh, but that's another story. But basically data is always up to date, and you're still querying the native storage. So it's kind of import mode where you are not invoking query against any kind of SQL database or any processing engine. You are querying the source as it is, the native delta tables, but they are still always up to date. So whenever in a SQL warehouse you update a row in a table, it will be immediately available in a DirectLake. So that's something that kind of we in this DP-600 you should familiarize yourself very fluently. On DirectLake, there are two different options. We have DirectLake on SQL, and we have DirectLake on OneLake. And the kind of, I would say the main difference is that on the DirectLake on SQL, you still have the SQL endpoint in the middle, which acts as a kind of metadata exploration phase of the model building or model kind of usage. So you can only use data from one database. As of on the DirectLake on OneLake mode, you're bypassing the SQL engine, and basically you can connect to multiple warehouses, multiple lake houses. They can be in different workspaces, just they have to be adaptable. So kind of that creating a semantic model from all different places from your fabric is possible with the DirectLake on OneLake.
So Vesa,
Yeah.
uh, uh, s- uh, we are near the time, correct? But one major query that I foresee from folks are that if you accommodate everything for everyone within one aspect called semantic model, wouldn't your semantic model be heavy? Correct.
Yep.
So then
Yep.
how do you foresee on that aspect
Yeah. So
and the benefits of DirectLake then?
yeah. So if it's an import mode, we are refreshing the data as it is. So we need to read a lot of data. If it's a direct lake mode, kind of the underlying table can be quite big, and we are not reading that uh, in any other case than on demand when we need it. So yes, there are some limitations on capacity sizes, how big of the table can be, and but kind of I would say that in the direct lake mode, you kind of the refreshness, how fast the data is available for consumption, you benefit so much that kind of that's the way to go.
So basically, you
Here,
have all the logic decentralized in the backend, and then your report is just acting as an interface, correct? Thereby
yes,
not creating a heavy load, and but still unifying all your logic in one place.
correct. Of course, you will lose some aspects of the semantic model because you no longer have a
Agree.
separate physical layer. The physical layer is your source data, so kind of calculated columns or things like that, which are physical on the semantic model, no longer work. But that's kind of it's a new way of working. You just create the calculated column on the source, and that's the way to go. Still, the same optimization techniques we have learned from the Power BI are still valid. So for example, use integers for joins because that's a very small native data type in the Power BI model. So kind of as the querying engine is still the same. So all of those aspects we have learned during the years to optimize the Power BI model still make sense. And then only including needed columns for the model also makes sense because otherwise the delta table is just huge and if we need to read the whole, even though it's a columnar format, but it's still consuming resources, so only include the data you really need on the model. But keep in mind the extensibility, as we discussed, that it has to be kind of you're basically making an agreement between the consumer that when you create the model, I'm making an agreement that this is the shape of the model, because if I change the shape on the reports based on that one, probably will have a hiccup or something. And it's a dimensional. Power BI has always been dimensional modeling. That's what the Power BI loves. So kind of we have facts and dimensions. That's a good way to go. And in the DirectLake, you can actually have both import and DirectLake mode. So kind of that aspect is also so if you need some features of the import mode, you can actually combine them on the new DirectLake on OneLake model. Okay, now for the last things on this session for maintaining, and back to you, Nanda.
So now one of the major aspect, Fabric being your data storage and analytical layer, one of the major aspect is data governance and security. Correct. So now in data security within Fabric, it comes in 4 different hierarchical aspect, one can say, correct? Now, basically the most upper hierarchy in Fabric is your Fabric workspace, correct? What Fabric workspace is? It's basically a logical container that has all your Fabric offerings, correct? So the first security that one can assign is at the most upper hierarchy, that is workspace level permissions. Now within workspace, there are 4 different roles or permissions that one can provide to: viewer permission, contributor permission, member permission, and owner permission or admin permission per se. Viewer is one wherein in case if you grant a user a viewer access, he or she can just take a view at the components within that workspace, but cannot modify anything. The next role above here is the contributor one, wherein a contributor can make changes of objects within the workspace, but cannot add anyone else. The next role, called member role, has same access as contributor, but with an additional scope to add other users within that, but for a member or below role. Whereas the highest role, that is admin, can add anyone else as the admin with all the lower permissions as well. So that is the most upper hierarchy. That is workspace permissions. Now within workspace, I have different components. Different components are what we call as items. So now I can grant access at particular item level. So in this case, let's consider that I have created a Fabric Lake house or a specific storage layer, correct? Then I can grant a user's access only on that specific Fabric warehouse or Fabric Lake house or the corresponding storage layer. That is what we call as the item permission. Then comes computer granular permissions, meaning within the corresponding warehouse, I have different attributes or tables, correct? So rather than giving a user entire access on the warehouse, that is the entire item permission, what I can do is I can give access only on a specific table or a specific attribute, a specific column in the form of RLS or CLS. That is the granular permission. And then comes the one-leg data access control, which Microsoft is enhancing day by day to meet the highest security standards. Correct. Moving on. So security at the semantic model. Correct. Vesa, would you like to provide an update based on your major experience on semantic model via the RLS concepts or DAX?
Yeah, we are about to run out of time, but yes, in the semantic model, all those role level securities you know from the Power BI are here still. So kind of the same type of things, and very much looking forward for the new one leg based security model where the security is coming from the source. So you no longer need to implement it in different levels, but kind of the row level security no one love is here. So you can implement very complex and comprehensive row level security solutions with the Fabric semantic models.
So basically within semantic model, you can have static roles as well as the dynamic roles. Correct.
Yes.
And moving to the next aspect, that is how to manage. Fabric provides you with the major aspect called Git integration. Now within that Git integration functionality at the workspace level, you can either integrate your code within the Azure DevOps, which is Microsoft's original Git code repository aspect, or you can also integrate into the GitHub aspect, which is also Microsoft's version of managing the code repository. And it is via that you can track and manage your changes and have a proper version control. Depending upon that, Fabric provides you with monitoring aspect, with one monitoring aspect to monitor all your jobs, be it data pipelines, data flow gen, to notebooks, etc. And then you have deployment pipeline functionality within Fabric that allows you to deploy your changes or offerings or contents from one workspace to another workspace. To be more specific, from one environment to another environment, on how you want to bifurcate and manage the CI/CD side of the things. You can also have your own custom built CI/CD, which provides you via variable library or other aspects. But all in all, Microsoft Fabric has multiple assets that helps you through the overall dev lifecycle. Moving on.
I think that concludes our today's session. So Nandani, what's your final things on the tasks to do for preparing for the exam?
So one aspect is understanding the different languages, correct? You need not be an expert in Python, correct? Or expert in KQL, but having a basic understanding across each languages would help you make a better decision while analyzing your data aspect for exploratory data aspect, correct? And one of the query was, what is the benefit of KQL over T-SQL in Event House? Now, in T-SQL, you can parse JSON, correct? But then in case if it's a complex nested JSON, correct? KQL provides an easier way to flatten that complex nested JSON by a simple aspect. But that is somewhat difficult in a T-SQL. And majorly most of your events are in the form of API JSON aspect. Hence, it's easier to have KQL flatten that data for more easier analytical aspect over T-SQL. So that would be my one suggestion. That is, you need not be an expert in all language, because trust me, Microsoft Fabric has Copilot integrated, correct? And having natural language aspect converted into a code does help you, similar to ChatGPT. So, but you need to have a basic understanding of these languages. So basic knowledge is sufficient, would be my experience. What about you, Esa?
Yeah, I completely agree. And on top of that, kind of go and enable the trial, get hands-on, do things, attend Fabric in a day, analytical in a day, or real time in a day, workshops, and kind of just use the Fabric, kind of familiarize yourself on the platform, and then that's the way to go. Just not kind of you will probably get even more out of the exam when you do kind of more hands-on things before, so that you can have an exam itself as a learning exercise, that hey, actually that's true, that this question opens my mind on this topic. And of course, kind of get the certification voucher if possible, and then schedule the exam, and then go for it. And don't forget those 4 deep dive sessions we have in the upcoming days and weeks.
And one common query that I'm saying is, which is one of the aspect, that if you try to use your personal account, you cannot create Fabric capacity or work on Fabric aspect, correct? You need a work account. Now you cannot, some of you might have restriction using your company account, correct? So that is not an issue. What you all can do is, you can use your personal account to log into my.visualstudio.com. There you get 1 month of free Azure subscription credit, correct? You can activate that. Once you activate that, you get your own tenant. Within your own tenant, you can create Microsoft account users, and via that user, you can create a Fabric capacity, correct? Since now you're using a Microsoft account, not your personal account. And that's where you can, within 1 month of free Azure subscription, you can create your own Fabric capacity and get an hands-on on the Fabric ecosystem as a whole, which would be a helpful scope for you all to have the DP-600 and even DP-700. So this
Perfect. So we are already over time. Thank you for being here and kind of going with us for all the topics, and thank you for the moderators for all the work you have done. So thank you for answering all the questions, and looking forward for seeing everyone in the upcoming sessions.
a special thanks to the moderators and the organizers, I'll say. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vesa. Thank you, Nandan. Thank you all for joining. Thanks to our moderators. And at the Reactor, we are always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find the link on the screen or in the chat, and we'll see you in the next one.